This is a Squiz podcast. We're your shortcut to being informed.
The Weekly Wrap is the week in news and what's coming up. I'm Claire Kimball.
And I'm Jodie Speers.
Operation Spider's Web has had military experts globally talking this week. We'll get you across the implications of Ukraine's drone attack on Russia and what it means for global security.
And Claire, love is dead. We'll talk about the end of the bromance between the world's richest man and the world's most powerful man, Elon Musk and Donald Trump.
Yep, you're back with another update on the mushroom trial. To be honest, that's why I'm here, just to hear where we're up to with that. And what on earth has been going on in Tasmania in the Parliament this week?
Very good question. Let's get into it.
Our podcast today is brought to you by HubSpot. We all need a bit more breathing room in our workdays, and HubSpot gives it to you. Breeze, their built-in AI, takes care of the busy work so you can focus on growth. Jodie, kicking off with the big news stories of the week, and as you know, we like to ease into it. One story that has spanned the life of the Squiz is Taylor Swift and her master recordings, her efforts to try and get control of them. She's done that this week. She's got the rights over her first 6 albums.
Yeah, hasn't that been a long battle? My big question here was how much did she have to pay to get these rights? There's been no official answer to that. There's probably NDAs all over the place, but some reports say that she paid $360 million US.
Yeah, there were some crazy dollar figures out there, some saying $1 billion, but clearly that's not the case. They're saying it's closer to that $360 billion mark. It's a lot, whatever it is. But those songs have made her a billionaire, so good luck to her. Which brings us to the call sheet. On News Club, Andrew had a really great conversation with Mark Bonanno and Sam Lingham. They're from the comedy group Auntie Donna. It was about the work that they're doing to help artists own their own work and also build these sustainable careers.
Yeah, it's a super interesting chat. Definitely have a listen. In fact, you can do that after you finish the Weekly Wrap because it's here in our News Club channel. My mum mentioned that she liked listening to Dana Reid after our episode the other week. On to the biggest story of the week though, Claire. The experts reckon it's fair to say that the face of modern warfare changed this week with Ukraine's big drone attack on Russian military assets. So we thought that that was a good place to start.
A very good place to start because that's a very big claim. But what happened in those attacks really was quite something. We've both been fascinated by this week. We were pinging messages to each other with different things to read and look at back and forth this week. What caught my eye was just how very serious defence analysts have been calling it audacious, ingenious. There were many who said that it's a turning point in the war between Russia and Ukraine.
Yeah, we're talking about Operation Spider's Web, which saw more than 100 drones smuggled into Russia on the back of trucks. The drones were hidden inside these wooden cabins, which reports say are regularly trucked around. Those cabins had removable or retractable roof panels, and this allowed the drones to be launched near 4 airfields, thousands of kilometres apart.
Yeah. Again, I say this regularly on Weekly Wrap. This is where a map would be really handy. However, we'll put a link to one into the episode notes. The attack was 18 months in the making. The logistics are next level. So just to imagine, Sydney to Perth is 3,800 kilometres. One of the air bases that Ukraine attacked was 6,100 kilometres away.
Definitely gives you a sense of the scale here. We'll also put a link to some pictures of it because the scale is huge. Video from the scene showed Russian military aircraft on fire. Satellite images showed the wreckage afterwards. And Ukraine claims to have damaged or destroyed 41 of Russia's military planes, including their strategic bombers. That's a pretty big chunk of their fleet.
Yeah, one of the reports saying about a third of their fleet of that type of aircraft that deliver those sort of missile strikes on places like Ukraine. If that is actually true, the United States reckons they hit about 20 Russian warplanes, destroying around 10 of them. So about half of the estimate that Ukraine has put out there. But it's really clear that Russia's military assets were the target and they were significantly hit. The main point is that those planes have been used to very devastating effect during this war.
You can only imagine how furious the Russian President Vladimir Putin would have been by this. He might have the upper hand in terms of military might, but Ukraine keeps finding these ways to fight back.
In big and creative ways as well. The fact that this attack was largely conducted remotely, so from back in Ukraine, it's really got the experts that look into this stuff around the world talking.
Yeah, it's led to predictions that future conflicts could be fought by troops from inside their homelands with these remote control type weapons. It's just so different to that traditional conception of war that we have.
Yeah, and it's also had countries around the world thinking out loud about their own infrastructure and how it could be vulnerable to similar attacks. There was an article in the Washington Post which put the link because it's a really interesting one too. It was comparing what happened in Russia this week to Pearl Harbor, for example, the attack there by Japan on American assets back in World War II. But this article describes how hard it would have been to detect that kind of enemy drone. If they were sent, for example, in a container to an American port, raises a lot of questions.
Yeah, highlights some definite vulnerabilities for a lot of us. How warfare is conducted is one thing, funding it is another. And Pete Hegseth, the US Defence Secretary, has called this week for our government to increase defence spending to 3.5% of GDP. It's currently at about 2%, so this would be tens of billions of dollars extra. It's mostly because of China. He says that China poses an imminent threat to Taiwan.
We've been talking for many years, of course, about that China threat in our region and what we need to do to make sure that we're safe and make sure that democracy thrives in our region, whether it's the Pacific Islands or other nations, and right to trade, to travel through those areas. All of that stuff comes into question. The United Kingdom is one country that talked about that this week. Prime Minister Keir Starmer said that his country would lift their defence spending to 2.5% of GDP, aiming for 3% in the coming years. That's all about their proximity to Russia.
Yeah, for his part, though, Anthony Albanese says that we're in quite a different position to the UK. He is facing considerable pressure on this, though. Australia's Defence Force Chief Admiral David Johnston made it pretty clear that he would welcome a higher spend. He's warned that we face quite a dangerous outlook and that the current budget is under a lot of pressure.
Kind of expect the guy in charge of it to want a bit more money.
Give me more.
It's probably a good time to put your hand up. Jodie, to close this one out, we should mention that Operation Spider's Web was carried out in the lead up to more ceasefire talks between Russia and Ukraine. That happened in Istanbul this week. Putin has told US President Donald Trump, apparently in quite strong terms, that Russia, though, will have to respond to that drone attack. So it doesn't sound like any sort of ceasefire is imminent.
No, it doesn't. And that was brought home by Trump in a meeting that he had with the German Chancellor Friedrich Merz on Thursday. Merz was there to encourage Trump to play a more active role in defending Ukraine and putting pressure on Putin to negotiate a ceasefire. Trump was having none of it.
No. And this is what he said in a part of the meeting, when they let the cameras in with the two leaders. This is his quote: "Sometimes you see two young children fighting like crazy. They hate each other and they're fighting in a park and you try and pull them apart. They don't want to be pulled. Sometimes you're better off just letting them fight for a while and then pulling them apart." A message now from HubSpot. Time might be our most precious resource. That's exactly what HubSpot gives back to growing businesses. Breeze, their built-in AI, handles those repetitive tasks that steal hours from your work week. Imagine a team of Breeze agents creating more content, finding prospects and delivering better service, all without breaking a sweat. HubSpot customers are generating more leads and closing more deals in days, not months. Visit HubSpot.com/AI to learn more. 3 other stories to wrap up from the week. We can't get a better intro than Trump's own words. Sometimes you see two young children fighting like crazy.
Such a good segue. There is trouble in paradise as the world's most powerful bromance goes south. Elon Musk finished up his time as a cost-cutting advisor in the White House a week ago, and Trump said that Musk was not really leaving and he would continue as an informal advisor. But then they were absolutely at each other's throats over Trump's major domestic spending bill.
Yeah. About that bill, as only Trump can, he's called it the one big beautiful bill. It's a massive bit of legislation. It combines tax breaks, spending cuts, border security funding, other priorities that the Trump administration wants to pursue.
Yeah, essentially it's delivering on a lot of Trump's election promises. But in his first media interview since leaving his government job, Musk told CBS News that he was disappointed to see the massive spending bill, frankly, and he reckons it undermines the work that he was doing on government efficiency and trying to cut costs.
And then Trump responded and he said he was very disappointed in Musk. He said, Elon and I had a great relationship. I don't know if we will anymore. And on social media, he said, the easiest way to save money in our budget, billions and billions of dollars, is to terminate Elon's government subsidies and contracts.
You can't just dismiss this as a slanging match either. It's already had an impact on Musk's companies. His electric vehicle maker Tesla closed down 14.3%, losing about $150 billion in market value. It was Tesla's largest single-day decline in value in its history.
And they've had some big declines in the past, so the fact that this is the worst one that they've experienced is quite significant. Jodie, as you know, I have a Monday News Club newsletter, and this week was titled, What Would Robin Do? Robin, of course, is Robin Denholm. She's the Aussie chair of Tesla. And I said that when these things happen, I always wonder, what is Robin thinking about and how is she going to handle this one?
Poor
because
Robin.
There are a number of these things that come up with Elon Musk and his companies and his political alliances. This is just another one of those interesting times.
Yeah, it must be quite the rocky job for Robin. Musk's businesses also play a big role in the US government space efforts, so there's some way that this can go. But the slanging match has heated up. Musk has now thrown Jeffrey Epstein at Trump.
Mocking his connections to the convicted sex offender, of course, he died in custody a few years back. There's always been this thing about other powerful men, particularly associated with Jeffrey Epstein. Prince Andrew was one, of course, that we've talked about quite a bit. Donald Trump has come up in those conversations as well. Of course, there's a picture that gets recycled every time of Epstein with Ghislaine Maxwell, with his wife Melania standing at a function together. And on X, Musk said, time to drop the really big bomb. Donald Trump is in the Epstein files. That's the reason they have not been made public. Have a nice day, DJT.
Have a nice day indeed. This is all playing out in real time. We can all see it because they're sort of tit for tatting on social media. So strap yourself in. I'm sure there'll be more.
Probably a big one over the weekend to keep an eye on. Let's move on from the big global story to a more local one, the mushroom murder trial. It's been a couple of weeks since we did an update on this, and we were speculating last time we spoke about whether Erin Patterson would actually take to the witness box, and that's now happened. Now, I've, just to warn you, completely tuned out of this story in the last couple of weeks.
Left it to me.
In advance of you doing all the hard work for me. So I'm going to let you tell me the three big things to catch me up.
Oh, there's been so much this week, Claire. I've had to really drill down to my three big things. First is to say that this is Erin Patterson, who is standing trial accused of murdering 3 members of her family and attempting to murder a 4th by putting death cap mushrooms in their lunch. This alleged crime happened in Victoria's Gippsland region. She did take the stand this week, to many people's surprise. But this is the first big thing. Erin Patterson told the court that she suffers from binge eating and bulimia, and she explained that on the day of the lunch, she ate about 1/4 to 1/3 of her beef Wellington, and that after the guests left, she binged on about 2/3 of a cake, and then she made herself throw up. So this provides a possible explanation for why she didn't get as sick as the other guests did.
And that also played into her false claims that she had ovarian cancer.
Yeah, much has been made of Erin announcing to her lunch guests that she had cancer when she didn't. The defence obviously wanted to explain that as well. Erin said that she had been considering having gastric bypass surgery to help her lose weight, but she didn't want to tell her in-laws about it because she was embarrassed and ashamed. So the cancer lie, she said, was like a cover for this planned weight loss surgery.
Got you. Big thing number 2.
She gave an explanation for why she dumped her dehydrator, the one that was used to dry mushrooms at the local tip. She said that her estranged husband Simon had put it to her pretty bluntly when she was in the hospital that she had used that to poison his parents. And so she said that then made her really scared that she was sort of going to be blamed for what happened.
Yeah, and just in the little bit of reading that I did do on this too, she told the court that she started thinking that the mushrooms that she foraged might have got mixed up with some mushrooms that she'd bought from a specialty Asian grocer, and that had inadvertently been served to her guests.
Yeah, and she said that chucking the dehydrator out and telling some of these lies was like a knee-jerk reaction to just dig deeper and keep on lying.
Big thing number 3, Jodie.
That's about why she made separate beef Wellingtons rather than that single big one that you see in the recipe books. She says that she wasn't able to get a piece of meat big enough. It was as simple as that, so she just used these individual steaks. And she also denied giving grey plates to her guests and having a different coloured one for herself. She actually denied that she even owned any grey plates.
Yeah, and you mentioned that there was a bit more about the mushrooms too when Crown Prosecutor Dr. Nanette Rogers got to have her go asking questions.
Yeah, so she put a lot of different allegations to Erin, which she denied. She showed the court a photo which she said was found on Erin's phone, and it showed some mushrooms on a set of scales. Dr. Rogers suggested that Erin weighed those mushrooms to get the exact weight that was required for the administration of a fatal dose for each guest.
And quite a bit has been made in the early days of the trial about her devices and what had factory resets. The accusation is that phone had a factory reset.
Yeah, so Dr. Rogers is basically claiming that she did that factory reset in order to get rid of that photo because she knew it would look suspicious. Erin denied all those claims, like I said, and she insists that she did not intentionally put any death cap mushrooms into anyone's food. Dr. Rogers still has more time to ask questions. That'll be into next week, so it's ongoing.
It sounds like there's been quite a crowd too at the Latrobe Valley Law Courts. This week has been like Pitt Street or like Burke Street, depending on what.
In downtown Morville.
Yeah, exactly. Members of the public have apparently been queuing up from 5 or 6 in the morning to try and get a spot in the court.
Yeah, a friend of mine even suggested she might drive down from Sydney just to go and check out proceedings. There's still lots of media there as well, obviously, including Helen Garner, who has a huge following as a crime writer. So I look forward to reading Helen's take on the Erin Patterson case.
Helen does these incredible books, doesn't she, on these very big trials. So I've read all of those. I'd be really, really keen for one on this. I think that would be amazing.
Yeah.
Jodie, moving on, Claire's Retail Corner is back.
I love Claire's Retail Corner. I'm all ears.
Well, you're a change from Kate because I think she's got warm enthusiasm. So I'm glad you're a bit more warm
it's
to
important.
it. And look, it is exciting because there's been quite a bit happening in our department stores and fashion brands for the last week or so. To start you off, Country Road Chief Executive Raju Vuppalapati resigned. He leaves in August. They're really struggling when it comes to making a buck.
Yeah, that group has Country Road, obviously, Trenery, Witchery, Mimco. They reported that their profit for the last half of 2024 was down by more than 70% to $14.2 million. Weak sales are behind that.
Yeah, and high costs to operate as well. That group is owned by Woolworths South Africa. Got nothing to do with the Woolworths here in Australia. They're very different companies. They've been fighting really hard for quite some time to try and contain costs and also try and develop lines that just have their viral moments with mixed success. It's also an organisation, Country Road Group, that has had claims of a bad culture over the last couple of years. So there's that. Woolworths South Africa also used to own David Jones until quite recently. It sold it to an Australian private equity firm called Anchorage. They've reported in the last week that the department store is really struggling to make a buck as well.
Yeah, an almost $75 million loss last financial year is what the books show. Anchorage says they're investing to transform David Jones. I feel like I've heard this a few times over the years. And part of that is building a compelling loyalty offer. And that played out in a DJs versus Myer shootout this week.
Yeah, battle of the department stores this week. So David Jones will partner with Qantas with their Qantas Frequent Flyer program. Their new David Jones Rewards program was announced this week. It got quite a bit of attention in the business pages. Myer last week announced Myer has a new revamped, they call it the One loyalty program. They've been partnering with Virgin Australia since 2022, but there's a really interesting twist in all of this.
Yeah, that comes down to the people involved. Myer's boss is Olivia Worth, who until quite recently ran Qantas Frequent Flyer.
Yeah, she was the boss of QFF. So she's sort of been gazumped, I guess, with David Jones picking up Qantas as its main loyalty plank.
Yeah.
Myer has Virgin. So, yeah, it's just such a small world.
Isn't it? I guess the question is whether these loyalty programs actually convert to more sales.
Do they for you?
Not for me, no.
Yeah.
I mean, shopping for me is about convenience, and there are so many options
Just getting the
online
thing
with
done.
fast delivery.
Yeah. For some people, though, they absolutely get into the collecting points game. And David Jones actually laid a bit of that out this week about what it should do for them in terms of sales. So Qantas Frequent Flyer has 17 million members. It's a huge
lot, isn't it?
program. David Jones has 3.7 million customers. They reckon that there's a really big overlap between their current customer base and the opportunity to take more David Jones people that want to accumulate points and turn them into shoppers. They reckon they can get their customer base to 5 million as a result of this.
Yeah, it's quite smart, really, tap into that market. That's a lot of shoppers, and they'll be hoping plenty more sales. A lot of that will come down to how we're feeling about spending. There were official numbers out this week that showed our economy is a bit more sluggish than had been predicted. So that's fired up speculation of more interest rate cuts.
I reckon looking at it, given the economy and given a few bits and pieces, there's going to be some epic sales at the middle of the year. I think there's some retailers who really want us to come and spend.
Yeah, bring it on.
A message now from Aware Super, which has just made retirement even more affordable by lowering admin fees by up to 25% for their retired members. With the cost of living front of mind for many Aussies, Aware Super is committed to keeping costs lower and delivering the benefits of being one of Australia's largest super funds. So with more of their members' money staying invested and working hard, your retirement savings are in good hands if you're with Aware Super. With lower retirement admin fees, Aware Super is super helpful. Consider if Aware Super is right for you and the PDS and TDM at aware.com.au. Amount of fee reduction will vary based on the amount balance. Issued by Aware Super Proprietary Limited, trustee of Aware Super. Jodie, let's get into what's coming up in the week ahead. We're waiting to see if there's going to be an early election called in Tasmania. That could all unfold on Tuesday.
Yeah, we'd been talking about covering this in our other 3 stories, but 1, heaps of news as always, and 2, it's all still unfolding. But we'll just give you the quick background. Things have unravelled pretty quickly for the Tasmanian Liberal government and its Premier Jeremy Rockliff this week. It started with last week's state budget and following that a no confidence vote against the government on Thursday.
And that was passed by a single vote after a couple of days of debate. If you're wondering how did it get here, it's a bit complex. The starting point, though, is that the Liberals are a minority government. There's 35 seats in the lower house in Tasmania. The Liberals have just 14 seats.
Yeah, so that's always going to be tricky, relying on the minor parties and the independents to get your agenda through. And the agenda is fraught at the moment. The state budget showed $10 billion of debt by 2029 and blowing out. The issue there is the interest payments.
Yeah, I mean, anyone who does finance says it's not necessarily the size of the debt that's a big issue, it's how you service that debt. So interest payments of about $650 million a year is really quite crippling for the Tassie budget because it's not a huge state, it doesn't have heaps of people paying tax. So to address this, the government was going to bring in some really big cuts to the public service. That was what they announced in that budget. And that leads us to Tuesday. So Labor's Dean Winter, he delivered his budget speech and reply, and that's when he moved this no confidence motion.
Yeah, that motion focused on 3 things: poor financial management, the government's plan to privatise some of the state-owned assets, and ferries.
The Spirit of Tasmania, I think we all have probably heard of it, but it's the ferry that goes between the mainland and the north of Tassie. There were due to be 2 new ferries delivered by late last year. The whole project has been delayed. If you're a Tasmanian, you will know this because because it's been such a big issue. A minister has already resigned over it. It's now a thing because the ferries were meant to leave Scotland bound for Tasmania a couple of weeks ago. That didn't happen.
Further delays. Very long story short, the pundits reckon that there will be an election. No one seems to want this, but unless Rockcliffe resigns, it seems that that is on the cards. Meet you back here next week on that, I think.
So. I think that's right.
What else is coming up, Claire?
The French Open kicks off tonight. The finals there, starting with the women. World number 1 Arena Sabalenka is taking on the world number 2 Coco Gauff.
Yeah, the men's will take place on Sunday. We're not sure yet who will be playing, but that will be decided over the weekend. As we speak, Novak Djokovic and Carlos Alcaraz are still in the running.
The Aussies are all out, so, whether you really care anymore or not, that's up to you. Next, of course, it's not that far away that we've got Wimbledon. That starts soon. On Monday, it's a public holiday for anyone unless you're in Queensland and Western Australia.
We're based in New South Wales, so heads up that there will be no Squiz Today on Monday.
No Squiz Today newsletter or podcast.
Don't be alarmed.
Yeah.
On Wednesday, day 1 of the ICC World Test Championship between Australia and South Africa at Lord's. And Thursday, there's some ABS data out.
Love a bit of ABS data, as you know. So the Australian Agricultural Livestock 2023-2024 financial year report is out, to be exact.
Will you run us through that next week?
I'll give you a highlight. I'll dive in and I will pick out a highlight just for you.
Thank you kindly.
Friday, Anthony Green is speaking at the ANU. He's reflecting on his 36-year career, of course, as the ABC's chief election analyst.
Yeah, quite the career. I wonder if he'll be on the speaking circuit in his retirement, perhaps. I'd pay to see him talk about all the election war stories. Some great history there.
Buy 2 tickets and I'll come along with you, I reckon.
It's a date.
Recommendations, Jodie. I am so jealous of your staying power with book reading.
Oh, it's not always great, especially when I'm in the textbooks. I am recommending one of my favourite books today. It's a book called The Eye of the Sheep by Sophie Laguna. Sophie with an F. She is an Australian author. This one won the Miles Franklin Award back in 2015. So it's not new. I'm not, dishing any goss about the hot books at the moment. But it's told through the eyes of Jimmy Flick, who is, I guess, what you would call an autistic boy who grows up in Altona in Melbourne. I'll warn you, it's not an uplifting book necessarily. It can feel a bit dark, but it is just so beautifully written and I really felt it, like it had my heart, this book. And it's one of those ones that you feel richer for having read.
It's one of your top?
Yeah. I'd say top 3.
Top 3, wow.
Yeah.
And you read a lot of books. So, okay, I'll definitely I'll probably buy it and put it on my book.
I was going to say, don't make too many promises. I'm good at buying books.
I'm not so good at reading them at the moment. But good recommendation. Thank you for that. For me, Murderbot. It's on Apple TV Plus.
Hadn't heard of this one.
Jodie, half-hour show.
Yeah, see, I help you on books and you help me on shows.
I know. See, I should be reading at night and I'm watching shows. I think that's what this segment is telling me. Murderbot, it's Alexander Skarsgård.
Ah, yeah.
Swedish. So, yeah, if you remember Big Little Lies, he was Nicole Kidman's creepy husband.
Ah, yes, okay.
Yeah, that guy. I liked the description that comes up on Rotten Tomatoes for it. It's a refreshingly jaunty sci-fi saga about finally coming out of one shell. Essentially, the bot is like a security unit and it's a whole sort of thing about him finding sentience. And
sounds quite quirky.
I'm not a sci-fi girl at all.
Neither.
Really like it.
Okay, I'll note that one down.
Try something new. Very good. I think that's us for the week, Jodie.
Think so.
Have a good long weekend.
The week after next.
You will. That's right. Andrew Williams will be here next week. I've got that in my diary. I haven't looked that far ahead. But yes, no Jodie next week. Andrew Williams will be here. Have a wonderful weekend. We'll catch you soon.
See you soon.
A huge thanks to HubSpot for supporting today's episode. With their AI-powered customer platform, your marketing, sales and service teams can move faster, accomplish more and stress less.